Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Always good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. You know, it's been a wild week of politics, but you could say that every week. Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and Troy Mayor Ethan Baker, who's a Republican but in a nonpartisan role. But on this program, we appreciate all of your perspectives. Thank you both for joining us here on The Pulse. We're going to begin in the Vatican. We never get to say that on this show, but we'll begin not in Washington, but at the Vatican. Pope Leo. Your thoughts, Congresswoman Dingell, on the intersection of politics and religion and this new pope?
I was very concerned about who was going to be the next pope and would he continue the legacy of Pope Francis. And while everybody said it could never be an American, I knew I've met the cardinal before. I don't know him well. I know others that have. I was very excited, astounded, shocked, and believe that he truly carries the spirit of what Jesus has taught us, and I hope he will be a bridge to many different faiths, will be a uniter, and will remind us all of the kinds of values that I was certainly taught as a child.
These are difficult conversations in a sense, and I ask you, Mayor Ethan Baker, to kind of step up to the occasion here. When you have Pope Leo talking so explicitly about things like immigration and things like the George Floyd case, you know, he talked about that on his X account years ago, and what he believes leaders should be doing in this world. What responsibility do leaders then have to respond if they are followers?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that first of all, I think everybody is more outspoken, it seems like, every day that we move forward in this country and in this world. So I'm not surprised to know that we have a pope now that's been very proactive on social media and has made big statements about policy issues. And the professor was talking about that's not new to popes and everything. But I think that leaders definitely should be listening to world leaders in any form, whatever that is. Whether or not they take that to heart and follow their lead, you know, that's going to be up to the individual leader. But I'm not surprised by it. I think that, you know, a pope in this country, especially having an American pope, is exciting, no matter if you're Catholic or not. I'm not Catholic. I know you are. I think it's got to be exciting for Catholics throughout this world when there's a new pope, or at least something to look at with interest. But I think that leaders always are going to follow people who have a big microphone, as a pope does, and represent, you know, millions of people. That's important.
President Trump today from the White House lawn was asked what he thought, and perhaps this is a moment that we have where Congresswoman Debbie Dingell is in agreement with President Trump. He said it's a proud moment for America to have a pope. Is this a moment to perhaps unite Catholics across this country?
I hope it's going to unite more than Catholics around not only this country but in the world. I think this man has, today he talked about bringing peace to the world. He is somebody who sees the humanness of every human being, reminds us that we need to take care of the poor. He reminds us of the teachings of the Bible, and I hope he is going to unite us all. We have much more in common no matter what faith we are, and we need to remind ourselves that we have far more that unites us than divides us.
Yeah, and these lines intersect. I'm married to someone who's a Catholic. My in-laws are Catholic, but even my parents, who grew up in India as Hindus, went to Catholic school from nursery school on, and so there's so many connections that we all have in this world. And so let's move forward and talk about these tariffs. The UK today, this is big news coming out of your second home in Washington, cutting tariffs from 27% to 10% on those autos. And in exchange, hey, UK, you got to buy more beef. And we're going to eliminate the steel and aluminum. At the end of the day, do you think this president is doing the right work by simply proposing broad tariffs and then bringing people to the table? Good news?
So I want to say this. I've said, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, tariffs are a tool in the toolbox. And when you're using them on China, I can rationalize it. I really don't know what he did today. It's still not clear. They're still working through a lot of details. I'll tell you something I do know. He exempted Rolls Royces and Jaguars, and again, he talked about how, I mean, the way he even talked about it was like we couldn't build a car like that in the United States. We didn't have workers that could do it. And again, he didn't give any relief to the workers who are buying everyday cars. So Britain's our ally, and I don't like taking on our allies and people that have been our friends for decades, but I don't really know what we got today.
Mayor Ethan Baker, you and I have talked about this president before. A lot of bluster and a lot of big proposals and big ideas. At the end of the day, he's searching for compromise, according to many Republicans. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think that's what deal making's about, and if you want to call him a deal maker, which he is in many senses, that's what's most important to him. You usually get the best deals when you work out something that both parties are going to want. I think we need to move on to Canada. Let's get everything worked out with Canada, so we're not at issue there anymore. I'm thrilled about the UK. They're an ally, obviously, but for here in Michigan, let's focus on Canada next, please. By all means.
Canada's not our enemy.
No.
Well, of course, they've always been. We've never had a hostile relationship with Canada in the history of the two nations. And now you saw that meeting at the White House yesterday, and I do want to ask you, Congresswoman, it looked like they were jousting for a moment, but they seemed to be pretty serious at one point where the British Prime Minister said, wait a minute, Carney said, we're not for sale. What are your thoughts on that whole back and forth between the president talking about making Canada the 51st state?
I don't think Canada should be the 51st state. I don't think it's an appropriate discussion. They've always been an important friend and ally. I say, even as we're talking about the North America trade agreements, we should be treating Canada different than Mexico. They are people that have trade unions, have environmental and safety standards, and a whole lot of other things.
You don't love that conversation.
And they're so interlocked with us.
Well, you know that,
so
right?
interlocked.
We're totally in agreement on this.
And that's the thing that's really, really difficult to watch. And I was actually had a late dinner with a member of Parliament from Canada last night who was in town for my State of the City address. And we were talking about it. And, he was a farmer by trade before he was in Parliament. And, he sold his tomatoes to Ohio and to all over Michigan and all around. And that whole business, I mean, it's just shocking to him. He's willing to give it a go and see what's going to happen. But they're not a 51st state, but they're closer than they're different than a country far away. I mean, I heard someone say that this is like a civil war between the United States and Canada.
Well, it shouldn't even be a civil war. And I want to say something. If Canadians, the Canadians are not coming across the border they used to travel is going to be down for this year. And more importantly, if Canadians become afraid to cross that border because they don't know how they're going to be treated, our hospitals are going to be in very serious condition in Detroit and Southeast Michigan. So we need to really...
We have 2 bridges now to Canada that are, the second one's almost done, the Gordie Howe. And you think about the perspective that we have here in Michigan is so different than those who have in D.C. the perspective about Canada. They're our neighbors, and there are neighbors in this country. And so it'll be interesting to see how this moves forward. There's never enough time, but I want to say with the Pope, with the tariffs, with all of this stuff going on, we always appreciate having you both of you on. Thank you, Mayor Baker. Thank you, Congressman, for being with us on the Pulse tonight. President Biden taking a look back at the 2024 election, what he says about his vice president's loss and concerns about his own health. You're watching the Pulse here on Fox 2.